2001 was a pretty good year for video games. Nintendo fans would get their Super Smash Bros. Melee, Crash, and Sonic fans got a brand new entry to their series, Metal Gear Solid 2 predicted the future, and we even saw the rise of some brand new IPs that would become mainstays in the minds of gaming fans to this day. Halo, Devil May Cry, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Animal Crossing. But us Mega Man X fans, we were about to go on a roller coaster of a bit of a losing streak for the Blue Bomber, starting with one of the worst selling games in the series, Mega Man Xtreme 2, released on the Game Boy Color. Weren't we already on the Game Boy Advance at this time? Mega Man Xtreme 2 in July 2001, at least in Japan, only to be followed up by a certain game that, assuming everything goes as planned, will be the topic of my next video after this piece. Yeah, ain't that a bit out of left field? A Game Boy Color game in the 21st century? A follow-up to Mega Man Xtreme at that, a portable Mega Man X adventure pulling bits and pieces from the first two X games and remixing them together for a decent, though admittedly forgettable experience, but I enjoyed it, though the team behind it seemed to have a bit of trouble coming up with original content for the game, as bosses and levels were kinda terrible. It did a good job at porting what worked from those first two games and bringing them to the handheld console, as even though the X series had already had two titles on the PlayStation, those unfortunate enough to have missed out on the PS1 but had a Game Boy Color laying around had a brand new title all to themselves, Rockman X2 Soul Erasure, or Mega Man Xtreme 2 outside of Japan, and god damn it, once again I wish we got the Japanese title over here. I learned since my last time visiting the Mega Man X series that in Japan, the first Xtreme game went by Mega Man X Cyber Missions, which is a much better title in my opinion. Not only does it sound better, but it also more accurately describes what the game is about. Not to mention that the title of Xtreme 2 feels a tad disingenuous. The game isn't at all a sequel to the first Xtreme, instead being a prequel of sorts to Mega Man X4, though that's really only elaborated on by the inclusion of Iris, making her first canonical appearance, which hey, that's pretty cool. I was hoping that this would be used as an opportunity to flesh out her relationship with Zero before she gets nearly Aerothed by the guy. Oh, Iris? That's kinda interesting. She's relegated to mission control, a similar role to Aelia in X5, which is a bit disappointing to say the least, though her updated design, I dig it. Series illustrator Haruki Setsugo, I hope I pronounced that right, said that he was more than happy to update Iris for the Game Boy spin-off, feeling like she wasn't given enough screen time in X4. But I guess he really didn't have much of a say in the writing process, cause she doesn't do shit in this game. And if I'm being honest, I think that her in-game artwork kinda clashes when put side by side with these recycled mugshots from X5, though that might just be me though. Though along with Iris comes two new antagonists to the series that continue the medieval theme set by Xtreme 1's antagonist. That's a weird thing to keep consistent between the games, but hey, I'm all for it. Brikana the Witch and her right-hand man, Gareth. Alright, I don't mean to shit on anyone watching the video who happens to be named Gareth, but what a stupid name for an X-villain. Here, X, allow me to introduce you to your new nemesis, Carl! Gareth was also planned to have a lion by his side, concept art of which exists that Setsugo himself was pretty proud of, but was unfortunately scrapped. And after seeing the writing of this game, it's pretty easy to see why. Though the design was recycled into Sigma's final form. Yeah, Sigma's behind everything in the game, no surprise there. Anyone familiar with the series could have seen it coming a mile away. But it's still a shame that Gareth and Brikana get next to no story and are ultimately tossed out of the window because Sigma's home. But I'll be talking about him later, because the ultimate reveal that Sigma behind everything is locked behind the game's third campaign. Like Mega Man Xtreme 1, in order to get the full Mega Man Xtreme 2 experience, you're gonna need to finish 3 full campaigns, though unlike the first game, this isn't split between difficulties, and instead given to our individual hunters X and Zero, culminating in Extreme Mode, which combines both of their campaigns together into a single adventure after finishing each one individually. I'm not a fan of this approach, but I understand that you gotta pad out your game somehow. It's understandable, though not forgiven. However, it does offer a breath of fresh air, with half of the game's Mavericks being relegated to X and the other half to Zero, giving these two almost entirely different campaigns up until you make it to the fortress, and even then, offering different final bosses to the two. And once you make it to Extreme Mode, you can switch freely between the two hunters whenever you want, something that would become popularized in Mega Man X7 and X8. It's hard to believe that this was originally implemented in this game. However, it does lead to some problems. I'll get into those in a bit. But first, let's start with our favorite Blue Bomber and dive into X's campaign. Sometime between the events of X3 and X4, reports of Reploids from a Laguz island start going offline, becoming husks of their previous selves, with Maverick Hunters X and Zero sent to investigate the island's Reploid research bathroom. This event of Reploids seeming to have their souls erased is dubbed the Erasure Incident. Oh, so we're doing the beginning of X2? Alright. X and Zero mentioned that these were Mavericks that they had previously destroyed, so is this the same factory from X2? Don't get your hopes up, there's no towering mechanoid at the end, but we do get... Oh, Jesus. Alright, I'm not going to show much of this fight in action. Doing damage to him has the screen rapidly flash white, and I'm not ready to trigger anyone's epilepsy, but he's pretty easy. Though his design is something more fit for a fortress boss than an opening boss, but maybe that's just me. And with its death, it becomes immediately apparent that this game is going to follow the footsteps of the previous Xtreme game and take its story way too seriously. The humans are met by Gareth, bragging that he's the one who's stolen the Reploid souls and that he will happily fight the Maverick Hunters if we destroy his 8 resurrected Mavericks. But then Iris makes the claim that a Reploid's DNA is like a human soul? I can understand a Reploid having a DNA-style programming that tells their body how to repair themselves if they have any sort of automatic repairing/healing system like X and Zero certainly do have. But how the hell is a blueprint of your body anything similar to a human soul? Are there even humans left in this universe? Whatever, Soul is a Disney movie. I can only assume that this is the result of poor localization, because if it wasn't obvious, the game's grammar is all over the place. It's clear that the translations and localizations were rushed, or at the very least, under budget. Maybe they thought the term DNA Soul sounded cool, and I would agree, but this explanation is dumb. But yeah, there's our 4 Mavericks. Even got a couple of X3 bosses thrown in there for good measure. And in something I'd consider heresy in the original game, I like to start with Neon Tiger, for no other reason than he got nerfed to hell and back, and is just laughably easy with starting Buster. Though his stage is where the game starts to show signs of falling apart for me. The first half of the stage is almost entirely original, borrowing the Hornet enemies from X4, but this segment is just so bland. It has an overabundance of leaps of faith over bottomless pits. I'm not a fan. And then for good measure, it immediately translates to X1 Sting Chameleon stage. Okay, that's fine. It's not a terrible segment, and we even get X2's Rabbit Right Armor. Yes, it is called the EG2 Rabbit. I have no idea why, but with its hover ability, some of the level geometry had to be adjusted, so the stage had some minor tweaks to it, and it's fine. You even need the Right Armor's hover to get the Heart Tank. Though the Ray Claw has nothing on the original Ray Splasher, this thing sucks. Oh boy, we got an X1 boss. And hey, this stage is actually pretty faithful to the original, and I actually kinda like some of the changes made to it. The stage splits into 2 paths midway through, and the sinking ship still results in an optional Ouroboros mini-boss, rewarding you with a chest piece armor capsule instead of a heart tank. And they even took the extra steps to put a ladder just above you to take you back onto the main path. I like that, that's a really nice change. The heart tank has been moved to the sort of harbor area just above the waterline, something that was in the original game, and I always felt that something should have been hidden up here. So kudos to Xtreme 2 for making that obscure childhood memory a reality. Octopus himself is a bit of a bitch though. You can use Rayclaw to cut his limbs off, similar to Boomerang Cutter in the original game, but here he just goes fucking nuts. He hops around firing rockets like he's playing fucking Quake, Jesus Christ. Hey, remember the Charged Storm Tornado move from X1, that big vertical vortex? Yeah, you get that from Octopus in this game, which I thought was a weird choice, but I suppose it makes sense given Octopus's suck move. That's fine, I can make that connection, and it absolutely shreds Flame Mammoth. Alright, time to meet the villains. It's here that we meet the main antagonist that isn't Sigma, Burkana, and with very little fanfare, where it turns out that her motivations are something. She wants to watch X and Zero take down the resurrected Mavericks to gather data on them, and use the stolen DNA souls to grow stronger, and that's all she wrote. We're not told the main villain's plans. Even when Sigma is revealed, we're not given even a sliver of what drives these two. But whatever, they're the villain, we'll play their game, and they'll be forgotten about once this game is over. Credit where it's due, this is a pretty good recreation of the original Flame Mammoth stage, though Maverick deaths don't influence other stages, so you'll have no choice than to play through the stage without an inch of it being frozen over. Though if I'm being honest, this was only a problem during my Extreme mode playthrough, more on that in a bit. But yeah, it's not a bad stage at all. The sub-tank, heart tank, and armor capsule are all in their original locations, even the X-Buster upgrade, though it is X3's X-Buster upgrade, which I've got some problems with. I'd be fine with this on the surface, 2 charge shots that, once they they collide, split into multiple beams, and scatter into multiple directions? That's a cool concept, and I think it worked even in X3, but here, for whatever reason, they removed the projectile that moves horizontally, so you're only gonna hit targets in a diagonal trajectory. And this is pretty stupid if you ask me. This was one of the key reasons I disabled autofire in the options, at least for some parts. Yeah, I'm playing with auto charge and auto fire on. As long as it's built into the game and you're not using any kind of external hardware or program, I have no problem using auto fires. Bite me. And yeah, this is the only sub-tank you get for your journey, where for whatever reason, X and Zero only get a single sub-tank to take with them into their campaigns, though you can have both at one time in extreme mode. This never really became a problem for me though. I rarely found myself in a position of desperate need for a sub-tank refill prior to the fortress at least, so I guess this is fine. Jesus, Mammoth doesn't even hesitate at the start of the fight, leaping at you off screen like that. Thankfully, the rest of the fight is a cakewalk, both with and without his weaknesses. It's somehow more amazing how much the Mach Tornado absolutely fucks with him in this game. You still get the fire wave from defeating him, though it's exclusively the charged variant rather than the flamethrower that we're all used to. Again, I never used this outside of a couple of weaknesses and getting the armor capsule in Tiger's stage. It's just the X1 headbutt, which I swear is only used to get the Buster upgrade in Mammoth stage. And yeah, despite being a hodgepodge of armor pieces, it uses the X2's second armor visually, which I'm fine with. It's a nice looking armor set and it's better than X3's. I tend to visit Volt Catfish's stage pretty early into the run to get the leg upgrade, cause see, Mega Man Xtreme 2, unless I did something catastrophically wrong, has no dedicated dash button. So before you get the leg upgrade, you can only dash one of two ways: double tapping forwards, which still preserves your momentum allowing you to do a dash jump, or take a note from his predecessor and hold down while pressing the jump button, which I wouldn't have a problem with if it didn't kill your momentum before you jumped. This method of dashing is only good for moving left and right, and can't be preserved with a jump, meaning that if you need to make a quick, reactionary dash jump, you need to use the double tap method, and that extra half second it takes to double tap, though incredibly rare, can cost you a life. The leg parts, however, bypass this, at least a bit, by granting you the air dash, activated by tapping jump again in the air, and it preserves your momentum with the dash once the dash is over. That's nice, I like it, but it feels more like a crutch for the game's bad game design, rather than just giving you some upgraded movement. Now, I can hear you typing, saying that the dash in X1 also feels like a crutch. Shut up, you're wrong. The game is clearly designed to let you through without the dash, and it is impossible to miss it in the base game, so you have it by the time you need it in the fortress. If you don't believe me, go play X1 and do Chill Penguin stage last. It's not nearly as hard as you think. And to prove it's not that difficult, here's all 8 stages doing Chill Penguin's last, condensed down to about 10 seconds. Alright, let's go catfishing. No, your eyes are not fooling you. This is Toxic Seahorse's stage from X3, not Catfish's. Though we do get Catfish's theme and not Seahorse's, which is a shame. Toxic Seahorse's theme is one of my favorites from X3, but it's not a deal breaker, though I do feel catfished. What is a deal breaker though is the second half of the stage. So the first half of the stage is a pretty faithful recreation of the original stage, with the Dash Boots armor capsule taking the location of the heart tank. But where did they move the heart tank, I hear you begrudgingly ask? I fucking hate this. I want the name of whoever thought of this level design and mail them a shipment of stock Intel coolers. The first encounter of these water torrents isn't too bad, it just pushes you back, and if you react fast enough, you can wall jump out of these spikes. It's not that bad. However, it's the only one in the game like this, and from this point on, the torrents become electrified, meaning they're fucking insta-kill. And guess what? This level's heart tank is hidden behind a detour where it's nearly impossible to not get killed by the electrified torrent. Now, if you know what you're doing, this segment is actually pretty short, and not too much of a problem. And I suppose that it is a good thing that they introduce you to this level mechanic with a non-insta-kill variant. And I think a mechanic like this wouldn't be as poorly received if it weren't on a console that's prone to screen crunch. But here, This is fucking terrible, and I wish the team made some original obstacles that weren't bullshit because of the screen crunch, but given that the team seemed like they didn't really give too much of a shit about this game to begin with, I doubt we would have gotten anything better. Anyways, Catfish is easy, he just hops around like a fucking idiot, though I liked that he got a cool special intro. No, you're gonna be swimming with the other catfishes tonight, motherfucker. You get Tri-Thunder, a move that I think I only used for the final boss of X's campaign. Not a terrible move, I just preferred to stick with my Buster. With all 4 of X's Mavericks dealt with, Gareth taunts the hunters that he'll be waiting for you at the Reploid Research Laboratory, confirming that this is not the same location from X2, I think, and the hunters give chase after Iris expresses some concern. Oh god damn it, I never noticed that you unlocked the player change here. I thought you only got that in extreme mode. Oops. Okay, it's X1's Fortress 2, but I can get behind that. A shame that it's not using the original music and it's using X2's Fortress theme, but that's still pretty good. Oh, it does shift into a Boomer Kawanger-esque section near the end, but I actually kinda dig it. I like this use of recycling, though Vanguard is back and his sprite was not adjusted at all for the lower resolution, so he's just fucking massive compared to X. He's weak to the Ray Claw, which does require you to get uncomfortably close, but even with that, he still goes down pretty quick. Alright, so we went from the second fortress stage of the first game to the first fortress stage of the second game. That's not confusing at all. This stage loves its insta-kill hazards, and navigating around them during this downwards vertical segment is a pain in the ass because of the screen crunch. There's also this really awkward fire/lava flood segment near the end, something you don't experience at all prior to this as X. But the lava itself doesn't do too much damage, and you probably could damage boost through all of this if you wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it because of the Sphinx tank. God, what a terrible boss! He's not as bad with Zero, but if you're going in as X, then you better be prepared for one of the worst bosses in the entire franchise. You have this awkward platform that you need to use off to the side because that's the only way you're gonna deal damage to the upper head. Other than that, it's a game of luck with very little emphasis on skill. And if you manage to get stuck under this platform while he's rushing you, which I guarantee will happen at least once, you might as well reset, cause there's nothing you can do, and if you do make it out alive, you're gonna take some heavy damage. I ended up restarting the stage so I could replenish my resources. I led with a Giga Crush attack to get a bit of free health off, and then prayed to Inafune to let me live, which didn't help because he didn't work on this game. This fight took me over 30 minutes to beat, and that's with abusing save states, making this one of the 2 segments in the game that I really wish I understood how the parts work. Yeah, I had a bit of a smooth brain moment. I didn't realize that you needed to equip the parts from the shop. I thought that they just applied passively. That's my fault, and there were so many things that could have made it obvious that I wasn't using them, but I just never caught on. But did learning this change my opinion of the game? Outside of the Sphinx tank and the Sigma fight in extreme mode? Not really, but I'll talk about that near the end. With one stage to go, you get a bit of taunting from whichever Soul Eraser you're about to fight, X's being Burkana, who the hunters haven't officially met yet, and X wants nothing to do with her, telling her to shut up the minute she appears. Jeez, don't you want to at least gain a bit of info from her before you tell her to fuck off like that, you idiot? This is another stage that has different paths depending on which character you bring to this point, and since this is X's campaign, I'm going to be taking X's route, which I really wish I didn't have to, because this section has a big emphasis on using the upwards air dash to progress. Oh yeah, I don't think I mentioned that. You get the X3 dash boots so you can upward dash in this game. That'll be important in a bit, but not only do you have to use it to progress and platform over this instant kill hazard, but you've also got this electric water from Catfish's stage making your life a pain. It is a short section, so as long as you have a bit of good luck or genuine skill, it doesn't overstay its welcome. And while we're on the topic, I'm really not a fan of this approach to level design. One thing that I loved about some of the better X games is that you're never obligated to upgrade your hunters. Sure, upgrades make your life easier and more enjoyable, but you'll never be in a situation where you're soft-locked just because you forgot a part. And if the game does require a part later on, it's impossible to miss. Requiring the quote-unquote optional dash boots in order to proceed just rubs me the wrong way. This will be something I touch on more as we move through the X series, so I'll be sure to keep my ramblings here to a minimum. But with some time and a bit of patience, you'll eventually make it to Burkana, the final boss of X's campaign, and she is actually not that bad of a boss fight. She'll fire these A and B projectiles at you, which will disable the respective buttons if you get hit. And if you need to get hit by one, make sure that it's the one that disables your Buster, because it's a lot easier to avoid her follow-up attack if you can still jump. But other than that, she just flies side to side, firing projectiles, and occasionally spiky balls that roll on the floor, but you can destroy those. She's actually kinda easy, though she does react react rather harshly to getting hit by the Ray Claw despite taking no damage from it. That's kinda weird. Alright, I'm gonna sum up X's ending in 5 words. I wonder what Zero's doing. Oh boy, time for Zero. The closest we'll ever get to a post-X3 Zero in a pre-X3 world. And oh, it's not good. Once again, this is likely the result of hardware limitations. However, that doesn't excuse how miserable he is to control. To start with the positives, Zero is able to use his saber while he's walking, something he otherwise couldn't do until his solo series on the Game Boy Advance. He also starts with his air dash, which is nice for the same reason that I wanted it so badly in X's campaign. But that's where the positives end. First and foremost, look at that range! I understand that this is the result of sprite limitations, I get it, but you need to get way too close for comfort to do damage with this guy. And by the time you get his special moves, all of his moves that use energy pull from the same energy pool. Imagine if X only had a single ammo pool that all of his special weapons pulled from, where if you ran out of ammo with one, you ran out of ammo with all of them. This wouldn't be a problem if Zero only had 1 or 2 special techniques that used ammo, but no, most of his moves use a bit of energy, and it's easy to accidentally trigger one as they still have action commands. It's not good. Have you ever played Deus Ex Invisible War? His campaign opens the same as X's, and even has better dialogue when the two hunters meet midway through the mission. It fits their characters much more than X's campaign. Zero's path, though, is a bit odd. Since X's path closely resembles the original stage from X2, they had to come up with something original for Zero, and it really feels like Babby's first Mario Maker level with the enemy placement and level geometry. Maverick's skull was also a bit trickier, cause you gotta get close to his face to deal damage, but so far, despite Zero's terrible range, his current mobility made it a bit easier than X, but that's gonna change later on in the campaign. Gareth shows up, yada yada yada. Whoa, 4 more Mavericks! Blast Hornet has possibly the most original stage in the game, but that's not much of a compliment. It incorporates those insect copters from the opening of X3, and that's pretty cool seeing them during gameplay, but they're just platforms instead of enemies, and I found that quite disappointing, and this stage also has one of the most confusing heart tanks in the game, at least in my opinion. If it weren't for how the level loads, you could just jump down and make a leap of faith, but if you try that, you're gonna get off-screened and killed before you can make it to that part of the level. You need to take this moving platform to the right in order to trigger the rest of the map to load, and then you can grab the heart tank. Words cannot describe how much I don't like this. And speaking of level loading, there's a point in the stage where in order to progress, you need to kill 3 of these turrets in the later part of the stage. But if you do so before going right first, you're completely fucked out of the armor capsule until you replay the stage. Though in order to get the armor capsule, you need to use a downward strike move on a wall. That makes no sense. I guess it's because it's Tunnel Rhino's ability and you need to use drills to get through walls? It's fucking weird. The mini-boss is cool at least. It reminds me of the turret mini-boss from Storm L's stage, but this time you need to shoot one of 4 big red fuck me lights to take it down while these Hornets respawn. I had the soft lock on me during my extreme mode run, maybe because it has 2 turrets vulnerable at once and the game just couldn't handle that. Hornet himself was pretty easy until he decides to bum rush you instead of flying back into his corner. That aside, possibly the strangest stage in the game with an underwhelming boss and a special move that I don't think I ever used for the remainder of the game. Oh boy, another X3 boss. Hope you guys like boulders that fucking hurt you even while they're stationary. I do think that the stage has a pretty nice right armor section. There's these cracks in the floor that lead to the rest of the level if you jump on them, but if you manage to avoid them, you're rewarded with a heart tank. Also, these right armor grunts here might as well just be turrets. They just fucking sit there and awkwardly stare at you the whole time. Very cool. You can find the armor capsule in the bottom left of this area, requiring the lightning attack. Yeah, it's just called lightning. And guess what? The bolts are fucking random. So waiting for the lightning bolt to hit the wall that you needed to destroy is a game of patience and RNG. Nice. Oh yeah, I guess I haven't touched on how weirdly cool it is that Zero has light capsules this time around. I think that's a first for the series unless you count the Black Zero capsule in X5, though the abilities he gets are pretty underwhelming. The head and foot parts let him break blocks and the chest cuts damage in half, all pretty standard stuff. The arm part, however, allows for a Giga Crush, which yeah, does a lot of damage, but once again it pulls from that shared ammo pool. God, God, what a terrible idea. This stage is also where that lava pool comes in that we saw in the second fortress stage. Once again, you could just damage boost through it. It doesn't hurt too bad. Speaking of not hurting too bad, Tunnel Rhino, my god, they nerfed you. He still rushes left and right, but when he does his drill shot, they leave out that bottom third, giving you enough room to dash under it when you're too close. Even his pinch mode isn't that threatening, with the rocks that he kicks up being slow enough to dodge. They definitely accommodated for the lower screen size with this guy, but they might have overcorrected just a bit. You get the drill strike that you need for the armor capsule and Hornet stage, and maybe deal a bit of extra damage to bosses, but that's way too risky for me. Not too bad of a stage, a trimmed down recreation of his original stage from X2. The heart tank is still stupidly hidden behind this wall at the beginning, I'm still not a fan of that, though at least it's consistent with the sub-tank residing in its original location. The light capsule is even decently hidden, residing where the gate to the X-Hunter was in the original level, and the end was replaced with this elevator segment where you navigate around instant kill spikes, but you're given enough space and breathing room for it to not be a problem. And even the boss fight is a decent recreation of the original. His lightning bolts aren't in a set pattern and instead strike your current location, and his seeds now only spawn a spike with the final seed, which are interesting changes, but hey, it's a pretty nice fight, short and simple. Oh god, it's a Ride Chaser level, though it's more like the Ride Chasers from X4 and 5 than the original, meaning no turning around, and as a result, the heart tank doesn't require nearly as much trial and error, thank god. Though the end is a bit too similar to the end of Volt Kraken's Ride Chaser, also jumping and then pressing the attack button completely kills your vertical momentum. You gotta attack and then jump to get these pillars near the end, not vice versa. I'm not a big fan of that, but it's workable. And yes, pressing the attack button does a dash move, you can't fire projectiles. Though the on-ground segments I think are even worse. First off, the wind generators are fucking insta-kill. It's not too hard to navigate around them, but god, it's just fucking terrible. There's no telegraphs, you just need to get the rhythm right. Thankfully, the moment is fairly short-lived, and the light capsule is pretty hard to miss. Man, I know why it's gone, but I really miss the rocket at the end of the level. Damn it. Ostrich isn't too difficult, a step down from his X2 fight. The arena still spans farther than a single screen, but not by much, and his charged sonic slicer is a lot easier to evade. Trying to hit him with his weakness though, much like Tunnel Rhino's light capsule, is a pain in the ass and just isn't worth it. You get the dash ability from this, something that I thought I've been doing through the entire game, but no, it's a move activated from the menu and only from the menu. No action inputs. It damages everything in front of you, and yes, it takes energy because fuck you. Gareth taunts the hunters for a second time, and yeah, the fortress is the same as X's. Honestly, it wasn't too much different of an experience up until the Sphinx tank, who Zero has a much easier time with. First off, he's able to knock the fucker back by attacking his front side, giving you a bit more breathing room, thank god. Though you still need to get way too close for comfort to deal normal damage to the guy, so you better pray that you brought enough special weapon energy, cause if you handle it just right, you can spam Ostrich's dash ability and make some pretty easy work of the guy. Man, going in and out of menus to attack like this, gotta make sure I'm prepping for the command mission review. Once again, Berkana reveals herself, and Zero is sent to go deal with Gareth. And Zero's half of the stage is much easier than X's, though again this is cause Zero doesn't have to deal with the upwards dash, so we've got some more forgiving level design. I really like the color palette that's going on. The blues, purples, and yellows, it's all very pleasing on the eyes. And Gareth is actually a bit of a challenge, in a good way. He does put up a shield, which if it weren't for that, he'd be probably the easiest boss in the game, but he telegraphs his moves, unlike almost every other boss in the game. I felt like I was fighting an actual challenging boss and not just a shitty mess of code. And like X, Zero's ending is him admitting that X is capable of holding his own, whether he likes to admit it or not, even though it's been that way canonically for the last 2.5 games. Though there's a reason for these mediocre endings. The real ending is hidden behind Extreme mode. I'm not going to recap the events of these conjoined campaigns because there's barely anything that's changed, and the few things that are changed are questionable to just downright bad. To start with the positives, you have access to character swapping from the get-go, which is awesome, though because of how much better X is than Zero once he's fully powered up, I just use Zero as my damage sponge and X as my boss killer. However, this leads to my biggest complaint of the mode. Only the hunter you use to deal the finishing blow to a boss gets that boss's special weapon, instead of giving you the special weapon for both both X and 0, which means that if you kill Wire Sponge with X, you cannot get the Light Capsule and Tunnel Rhino stage. Wah wah, too bad, start a new file. This also cucks you out of the Hadouken and Shoryuken at the end of the game, though I don't think I would have needed it. This is just such a terrible design choice, and I cannot for the life of me think of any reason that the devs thought that this was a good idea other than padding that punishes the player. This is just fucking terrible. The Fireballs and Flame Mammoth stage are also insta-kill for some reason, which is annoying, but I didn't find it too offensive. Also, is Launch Octopus normally this aggressive in Extreme Mode? Once Gareth and Berkana are defeated in Extreme Mode, Sigma finally shows his ugly face, implying that we woke him up, but also he's been watching us? That's not contradictory. He even says that Berkana took things too far and he's glad that we took her out. Alright, tell me, how far is too far for Sigma? Nuking an entire state? No, that's fine, but Souls. Fortress Stage 4 is nothing but a boss rush. Yep, we got a boss rush. Interestingly enough, this is a rare instant where the rematched bosses are fought in their original arenas. This could be the result of storage limitations, but I don't hate it. And though I think it's a weird choice, using the background of Cyber Peacock stage is an interesting touch, though I think it's weird that Sigma gets Peacock's background while Berkana and Gareth get Sigma's background from X4. That feels backwards. And after our rematches, it's time for our final bout with Sigma, reusing his Neo Sigma form from X2, and this fucker is fast. If it weren't for the unresponsiveness of the controls, I'd argue that we've got a pretty good challenge here, though despite my complaints, I was still able to get through the fight relatively unscathed after a few tries. And finally, Sigma fucking Beast. Possibly the worst Sigma form in the entire series. Now the design is pretty fucking tight, but the fight, oh my god. First off, his sprite is fucking massive, not using background elements like Extreme 1's Wolf Sigma, meaning that this guy doesn't animate at all, instead telegraphing what he's about to do with palette swaps and the screen flashing rather than animating them, which is fine in theory, but shit in execution. You can't hurt him whenever he turns pink, and you're left to just sit there and try to survive. And chances are, you won't. And that's even if he telegraphs his moves. Sometimes he just doesn't. This is where I made the unfortunate discovery that parts need to be equipped. But even with the double upgraded Buster and D-Barrier, this fight it's terrible. It's fucking terrible. You need to air dash upwards to hit his chest with a charge shot at least 4 times, assuming that you have the fully upgraded Buster, and then deliver a charge shot to the Neo Sigma within. Which, if I can compliment this boss on anything, it's that I love being able to see Sigma's previous form inside of his super form. It's a really nice touch, even if it is just to save on space. It's a positive example of system limitations. He does still have a pinch mode, where he'll either fire beams that need to be dashed under, fire a big fuck you laser from above that can only be avoided with a bit of prep time, and a dash that I swear is impossible to avoid. Now yes, I am aware that this fight can be absolutely busted with this game's ultimate buster, turning all of your shots into charge shots that when paired with rapid fire is just fucking insane. And by god, I wish I had known this prior, because this fucker deserves to be cheated against. Not to say parts are cheating, fuck you. It took me over 30 minutes to beat this guy, and that's with save state spamming. Yes, I abused save states with this guy, and anyone who can beat this guy without save states or the ultimate buster deserves a fucking purple heart. You know, they could have used this as an opportunity to see what Sigma's been up to prior to his events in X4, but no, he was just dead again. And the ending we got was just, yay, Reploids get their souls back! By the way, the Colonel might be mad about this, despite nothing in the game mentioning the Repliforce aside from the emblem on Iris's outfit. Oh my god. I did not enjoy Mega Man Xtreme 2, and while the game is certainly more bang for your buck compared to Xtreme 1, I'd argue that in this context, less is more. I'd rather have the safer and less broken experience of Xtreme 1 over this dumpster fire of an experience any day, at least when it comes down to completing the game. Zero sucks and he's not fun to play, and the original content made just for this game isn't fun, or well thought out for that matter. And while there's certainly glimmers of hope in the Soul Erasers, the potential then plummets when you add level design and the final boss to the mix. I started this review in hopes of it being a palette cleanser for my next project after this video, Mega Man X6, thinking that it couldn't be nearly as offensive as that game. And after playing through Mega Man X6 and getting every ending, I can't believe I'm saying it, but yeah, I think I would rather just play X6 over this. You know, the weirdest connection is that the Japanese commercial has X6's theme Moonlight playing over it, despite X6 not coming out for another 4 months. guess they just had to use whatever music they had laying around.